Hey there, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you guys had a great weekend. We are going to finish up our section on protists this week. We will be looking at the plant-like protists and the fungus-like protists. So let's go ahead and get going here, and we will start with the plant-like protists. The plant-like protists are also called algae, which is a term I'm sure you are familiar with. They have a number of things in common. First of all, they are all producers. They make food by photosynthesis, which means they all contain the pigment chlorophyll, which is found in organelles called chloroplasts. Most of them also have other pigments called accessory pigments that give them slightly different colors. They're not all green. And most of these, as you might have guessed from the word algae, are found in the water. There are many different phyla of plant-like protists. We will look at the 6 major ones, beginning with the phylum Euglenophyta. The common name is Euglena. These are single-celled organisms, and interestingly, they can move with a flagella, just like members of the protozoan phylum Mastigophora. But probably the most crazy thing about members of this phylum is that these individuals are both producers and consumers at the same time. When the sun is shining, they get their food through photosynthesis. But when it gets dark or if it's cloudy out, they will actually hunt bacteria and other smaller protists and act like a consumer. Our next phylum of algae is called Chrysophyta. The common name is diatoms. These are actually one of the most common types of algae found in the world. You can find them in salt water and fresh water. And one of the really cool things about these organisms is that the cell wall contains a lot of silica, which is a glass-like substance. And what that ends up doing, as far as a really cool property for these algae, is it makes them very reflective. Light shines off of them in a really cool way, and we actually scoop up these dead algae off the bottoms of these bodies of water where these algae grow in really large numbers, and we clean them all up and process them, and we use these cell walls to make reflective paint that we paint roads with, and we paint road signs with. And then another use for these is we also put these into attic insulation. They have really good insulating properties as well. So kind of a cool little organism. Next up, we have the phylum Pyrophyta. The common name for these algae is the dinoflagellates. That name actually means the spinning flagellates. They have 2 flagella. One actually moves the cell through the water, but the other one makes it spin like a top. Some of these are very poisonous. They create a neurotoxin, which is very lethal to people and fish. And during certain times of the year, these algae will reproduce very rapidly, and they actually turn the water red. In places where this happens, they call that the red tide. And for a long time after that big bloom of algae, you cannot harvest any shellfish from the area, because shellfish are filter feeders and they filter out a lot of these poisonous algae. And if you were to harvest clams or oysters or things like that from that area anywhere near to the time of the red tide, those shellfish would still be poisonous. The red tides kill a lot of fish as well and make life difficult for fishermen. The phylum Chlorophyta is the most diverse group of plant-like protists. There are members within this phylum that are big, many-celled algae, and then you've got a lot of them that are single-celled as well. While some of them can move, most of them cannot. The common name is green algae, which you might have guessed from the phylum name Chlorophyta. The chloro comes from the name chlorophyll, which is the green pigment found in all algae. You can find these organisms almost anywhere. You can find them in salt water, fresh water, soil, snow. Some live inside other organisms. Some are even parasitic. So it's a very diverse group of algae. Next up, we have the phylum Rhodophyta. The common name for this phylum is the red algae. A lot of seaweeds belong to this phylum. An interesting thing about red algae is that it can live at great depths because red pigments are able to absorb light that penetrates deep into the water. And another interesting thing about these organisms is that they are a common ingredient in a lot of foods, including pudding, and they're also used to give toothpaste its creamy texture. Well, this brings us to our last phylum of algae, and that phylum is called Phaeophyta. The common name is brown algae. Most of these are many-celled. In fact, the largest protists in the entire protist kingdom belong to this phylum. The giant kelp, which form the kelp forests off of the Pacific coast in the northwest United States, they can grow to be over 300 feet tall. A lot of brown algae are an important food source for fish and also for people. Among other things, brown algae are used to make ice cream and marshmallows. Before we end today, I want to speak just briefly about the fungus-like protists. The fungus-like protists have a couple of things in common with fungi. First of all, almost all of them are decomposers, which means they get their food from dead organic matter. There are a few that are also parasites, though, just like there are in the fungus kingdom as well. And the other thing is they reproduce by forming spores, which at this point, don't worry if you don't understand what those cells are. For sure, we're going to talk about that coming up here when we talk about fungi. There are two phyla that I want to go over that are fungus-like protists. The first are the water molds. Water molds are decomposers and parasites. They are sort of notorious for causing the Great Potato Famine in Ireland and also for causing diseases that attack many aquarium fish. The second are the slime molds. Slime molds are kind of cool because even though they're single-celled, at times they come together to form a mass of slime. The mass of slime moves over the surface of the ground, eating bacteria and dead organic matter. I would strongly encourage you to look up pictures of slime molds and videos of slime molds. They're some of the coolest organisms out there. In the time that we've got left today, I'd like for you to do a couple of things. First of all, I'd like for you to create a copy of this data table in Pages for the plant-like protists. Go ahead and fill that out using information from this video and turn that into Schoology. Second, I would like for you to look over the tasks that remain for this week and create a plan for you and your group as to how you'd like to attack those.